You'll hear this propaganda all the time with people talking about America is the greatest country in the world. And I'm not necessarily here to debate that one way or another. However, I will say this. If this is the greatest country in the world, with how screwed up this country and as many stupid, idiotic things that go on in this country, if we are truly the greatest country in the world, how fucked up does that make the rest of the world? I can't speak to those things whether we're the greatest or the not. I can speak to, however, something else that I think America, frankly, and the people in America sometimes are among the stupidest and dumbest in the entire world. And I think America flat out is stupid. And throughout the month of June, I'm going to be talking about this in my Stupid America series, talking about so called hot button controversial topics that I think so many people are just flat out wrong on. They lack logic and they lack common sense. They get caught up in their emotions, their passions, their fears, and their biases, and the propaganda that's been pumped down their throat for so many years, and allow it to skew their perspective and their view and grip on reality, frankly. And the first topic in this series to me is marijuana and why I feel marijuana should be legal right now. This is one of these things that the view of society in this country, the view of the people in this country is starting to shift in the right direction, in my opinion. More people support marijuana legalization than oppose it. That's a good thing. It's coming. It has to come eventually. It can't be fought forever, but it is going to take a long time for it to happen, and it's necessary for it to happen. So why wait? We need to get going on this and do it right here and right now. Because the longer we wait and the longer we delay, all we are doing is perpetuating old mistakes and continuing them and hoping to see any other new results other than the disastrous results that we've seen for years. And what I don't understand about this country is that until the 1930s, marijuana and other illicit drugs were legal in the United States. When alcohol was under prohibition in the 1920s and early 30s, you could still get marijuana legally and heroin and cocaine and all of these other things. And you would think over a period of time, society would evolve and progress and change and become more open minded, and that tends to happen. But not in the United States with marijuana. People have become more closed minded over the years, and only recently has started to broaden and expand their horizons and started to think more logically, in my opinion. How stupid is it that in the 1920s and early 30s, that certain groups of people thought it was a good idea to ban the sale and consumption of alcohol? Try to make it a dry country. I get maybe what their thought process was. Too many men were coming home from work and going to the bars and spending all their money from work from the week on booze. They were coming home drunk, and it was becoming potentially a scourge on society. But what happened? Once they banned this stuff, people were still going to do it anyways. It became a systematic thing that led to corruption, and let's not forget all the great unintended consequences of organized crime, which exploded and grew exponentially during this time, and how unsafe this country became, and how much of a waste of money enforcing the prohibition of alcohol truly became, which is eventually why it was overturned. Because there was nothing positive coming from it. Everything ended up being a negative out of it. But yet in 2014, with a lot of these same characteristics being applied to the prohibition on marijuana, we still haven't legalized it in this country. Only two states, Colorado and Washington, have had the courage to do the right thing for so many different reasons and make marijuana legal. The time has come. How stupid is it in this country that something like marijuana, which is consumed regularly by a small percentage of the overall United States population, with no scientifically proven real long-term health consequences, that less than 10% of the people that actually use it become chemically addicted to it, is illegal. Yet things like alcohol, which is definitely addictive in a large portion of people that use it, that can lead to abuse. People will get behind the wheels drunk. They will become violent when they drink. They will end up dying from cirrhosis of the liver and other diseases caused through the use and abuse of alcohol. That's legal. And then cigarettes, tobacco. You know, we know what cigarettes can do. It's well documented fact that these products can kill, and yet that is still legal. But yet weed, which doesn't have these things going for it in its corner in a negative sense, is the thing that's fucking banned. How stupid is America on this issue? Think about it this way. Over 700,000 individuals are arrested for marijuana each and every single year. That's more arrests for marijuana use and possession and sale and manufacturing than all other crimes and arrests combined in the United States. Enforcing the prohibition of marijuana in terms of police force and the judicial process, what have you, costs taxpayers over $10 billion a year. Over $10 billion a year. Think about that for a second. And another thing about this is it's a very much kind of a socioeconomic thing. And what I'm talking about is it's almost like a continuation of a Jim Crow type of policy, because the use of marijuana and possession of marijuana, sale, distribution of marijuana, especially when you focus on the use of marijuana between black individuals and white individuals in this country, is basically identical, basically the same. Yet the arrest rate for blacks is over 4 times more than the arrest rate for whites for the same usage pattern. Now, you could sit there and you could talk about the situations and the circumstances, but at the end of the day, if you are programmed as a society to believe certain things, and your cops and your police state and military infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, are programmed to look for certain things, all it is going to do is to lead to an increasingly disproportionate amount of black individuals compared to white individuals being arrested for the same damn things. For every black individual you hear about smoking weed, there's a white individual that does it just the same. But all the focus is here and not here. 25% of our total prison population in this country, or close to it, a little over 20, close to 25%, are incarcerated for marijuana-related charges. Almost a quarter, think about this, almost a quarter of the total inmate population in this country is due to marijuana-related charges. Just think about that for a second. We spend $5 to $10 billion every single year on the care and upkeep and maintenance on these inmates incarcerated for marijuana. Just think about that for a second. For marijuana possession, use, sale, manufacturing, up to $10 billion a year, both in terms of enforcing the marijuana prohibition and then the cost of providing for them as inmates. Not only that, we're looking at 40, 50, maybe more $billion in tax revenue every single year that this country misses out on by perpetuating this ridiculous prohibition of marijuana policy. So we are flushing a bunch of money down the toilet every single year, costing ourselves a huge new tax revenue stream that everybody could enjoy a nice windfall off of. For what? For perpetuating a flawed, mistaken policy that has been in place for over 8 decades. Think about it this way. Since the early 1970s, when Richard Nixon declared a war on illicit drugs, this country has spent over $1 trillion with a T, $1 trillion with a T dollars on the war on drugs. To do what? The United States has the highest use of illicit drug use in this country. We have the second most individuals per 100,000 people in any country in the world incarcerated, behind only freaking Russia. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, prison populations in the entire world, with over 2.3 million Americans incarcerated in United States prisons, both state and federal, all around this great country of ours. We spend almost 3 times as much on the care of those inmates as we do per student in the public school system. Does that make any sense? So we waste all of this money to care for inmates. Why? Because they smoked a little weed or they happen to sell a couple ounces of the shit? This is so stupid and so ridiculous. We are flushing money down the toilet. We have flushed over $1 trillion in 40 plus years down the toilet. And let's not even look at the real numbers in today's math. If we adjusted that for inflation, how much that would truly equate to what? Maybe $4 or $5 trillion? To do what? All of this to combat a problem that really doesn't affect that large of a population of the country. What percentage of Americans actually regularly use marijuana? Maybe 10%. If you want to go a little bit higher and highball it, maybe 15%, but we'll go right around 10%. So we've spent over $1 trillion in 40 plus years on the total war on drugs, which you know a disproportionate large portion of that has been spent on the enforcement of marijuana prohibition and then the incarceration and upkeep and maintenance and care for these inmates for these ridiculous marijuana charges. And all the while, costing ourselves a huge tax revenue stream. We are also incarcerating a disproportionate amount of black individuals, in particular black males, and in particular especially young black males, for long periods of time for nonviolent offenses pertaining to something that is chemically addictive than less than 10% of the people that regularly use it, which again, mind you, is about 10% of the American population. And this substance here, which has several scientifically proven health benefits for use and regular use, and very few, if any, long-term consequences or health concerns associated with its use. This is illegal. Yet alcohol and cigarettes, things that use and abuse and addiction are proven to lead to deaths, and a lot of them in this country every single year. They are legal. A country like Amsterdam, where marijuana and drugs are legal, has a lower use rate among their teens than this country does, and we've had the shit banned for almost 8 decades, and we have declared war on these drugs for over 40 damn years. It is about time that America understands that our policy and our philosophy needs to change on marijuana. It's a broken system. We could sit there and take the money that we spend on the ridiculous prohibition on marijuana and the money that we spend to largely incarcerate black male individuals and young black male individuals at that for stupid marijuana charges and possession charges and use, sale, manufacturing charges. Take that and use it to fight an actual war on drugs. Go after the freaking drug cartels. Hey, here's an idea. You take marijuana off of the consideration from an illegal standpoint. They no longer have that big money boom that comes from trying to smuggle and sneak marijuana across the border. You're cutting off a huge revenue stream while creating yourself a huge revenue stream to be able to maybe fight against these cartels trying to smuggle other drugs out across the fucking border. Now, the legalization of heroin and cocaine and methamphetamines and opiates and etc. That's a different subject for another time that I don't want to get into here. But there are so many things from a positive standpoint that come from the legalization of marijuana that I cannot advocate or justify this ridiculous prohibition policy being continued anymore in this country. We flush all this money down the toilet for what? Disastrous results. And we continue to flush more and more money down the toilet for what? Disastrous results. Again, it's almost like a form of Jim Crow laws. It's almost a form of like state-sanctioned racism being continued in the 2010s now, because you have a disproportionate number, and that number is continuing to grow, of black individuals being arrested for marijuana possession, sale, use, manufacturing related crimes, even though all of these statistics in terms of use in particular compared to white individuals is exactly the same. We have a quarter of our prison population damn near devoted to something like this, largely primarily a lot of these individuals nonviolent offenders, spending over 20 billion with a B dollars every year just from the enforcement of it and for the providing for the care and maintenance of these inmates on a year in, year out basis. Imagine if you use that $20 billion and you reinvested it in our education system or in infrastructure or maybe on other things, securing our borders, things like that. All of this to do what? To prevent 10% of Americans from regularly and consistently using it? Okay, let's say it got legalized and people went batshit crazy about it, and 25% of Americans regularly used marijuana. Those numbers would be similarly in line with probably cigarette use and much lower than alcohol use. I assure you of that. Would that really be that disastrous for this country? I think not. And the long-term benefits that would come from the tax revenue stream that would be created from the ability to regulate and tax and control the distribution and sale and manufacturing of marijuana makes this a win-win-win all the way around. Just fucking do it type of thing. It is 2014, and we still have a ban on grass. And it's ass. Only in stupid America would some people still think this is a good idea. It's time to use some logic. It's time to use some common sense. If you think marijuana is one of the great scourges that faces our society here in America in the 21st century, then shame on you, frankly.